My name is Stacy Jenkins, and I haven't posted in a long while because of the current global pandemic that's going on with the COVID-19, with coronavirus. And I definitely wanted to share some viewpoints because after, like many of you who have been staying home, have been observing all of the events that are going on within the media, and like many of you, myself personally, I've been very active within the past few months and previous weeks in trying to add my solutions to the problem. And I definitely encourage many of you to not to only just sit at home and to be a spectator of what's going on during this moment in history, but for you to also be a partaker of the solutions to help us to gain a better perspective and for us to get to a final place that where all of us are seeing equity, equal opportunity, economic equity, social justices are being met for all of us as Americans, no matter what your background, your race, religion, sexual preference. We want to see America be its greatest potential. So I recently ran for office locally in my town for a commissioner seat. I didn't win. It was my first time running for office, and it was a great experience. I didn't expect to win the first time, and the person I was running against was an incumbent anyway. He's been in office for a while and has a better foothold in with the community, being familiar with him. But I looked at it as a great way to use a platform to be able to do great things within my power within the area that I was running, and also outside of the area that I was running. So I joined partnership as I was running for office with great organizations that are in this community, Middle Georgia, and outside of the community of Middle Georgia that came to the city to help support some of those initiatives in food and gun violence prevention, and also in regards to our voting as well. So, and also with the current social injustices that have occurred, which have been occurring for decades now against African Americans, but what really sparked off most recently with Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. So there have been marches and rallies and different things that I've been a part of, and also initiatives that I've been a part of in helping to, again, create solutions and not just be a spectator of the issue. But what leads me to talk today, let me add that I do own and direct two media entities. One is called Pop of Genius Films. I started about 2 years ago, and it is a for-profit film company. We do documentaries and we do entertainment film. And one of the current films that we're doing, we're in hiatus right now because of the coronavirus, is called Love, Blood, and Cotton. And it's a politically driven drama based on a southern town in Georgia, a make-believe southern town in Georgia, where politics and money and social standing are all pretty much equal. There's a lot of sun coming in right now. Are pretty much equal between the white, black, and Latino community within that script. So it's really fun. It's very low-key right now, but hopefully we'll continue to pick up momentum once we start filming again in the future when the COVID-19 has kind of gotten under wraps. So once that picks back up again, we'll go back to filming Love, Blood, and Cotton. The second media entity that I'm over is called Epic Urban TV. And Epic Urban TV is a non-profit media group, a part of the media group that I organized. And what I do is I film local statewide, and for urban communities, minorities, and individuals that are doing events that are driven towards the urban and African American and minority community. And it's from a different perspective, so it's like it's unique events. You know, it's just not like, oh, we're just having a tea. No, we're having a tea because we're trying to raise awareness of public art. It's something that's unique, and so I look for stories like that, and then I go and cover them. And so you can find both of those media groups, both of those media entities under that group. I have a Pop of Genius Film YouTube channel, and I also have an Epic Urban TV, and so those links will be down below, and it'll also be in the description box underneath as well. So today, the reason why I'm in front of the camera talking and creating some type of video is because I'm really confused on where the Black Lives Matter initiative started and where it currently is right now. I turned on the TV the other day and I'm like, what's going on in Portland? Like, the mayor is getting tear gas. Is it because of the Black Lives Matter, or is it because defunding the police? Now, I know that Homeland Security is there, and that is an issue. That's a serious issue. But to stay with the main topic that I'm talking about today, because there's a point on why I brought this up, is that all of this really started from when George Floyd was inhumanely murdered by police officers within Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he was suffocated to death. And really that was one of the many events that led to this new reigniting of Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter has been around for a long. Black Lives Matter has been around for centuries. It's just now that it has this particular label with this particular generation, and it's covered more because of our ability to technology and the speed of information and how it gets to us. So Black Lives Matter in the state that it's in now was really charged by what occurred with George Floyd. It was the first time where a lot of white Americans could no longer hide behind the shroud of racism is not an issue anymore. When you saw that man's life be squeezed out of his body and he was calling on his mama, and when they finally rolled him over, he had wet his clothes in his last moments of death, you could no longer deny that there was an issue. And so that leads me to how peaceful and challenging protests and riots, because we're not going to say they were violent riots. It's not violence. It's a challenge against a system. And so unfortunately, some of the repercussions of that challenge ended up with some vandalization. And no, I do not support that at all. I wouldn't have not went that route. But I bring that up because a lot of that vandalizing and looting was not done by Black lives. And burning down of the precinct, and burning down of the Wendy's restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia, after Ahmaud Brooks was murdered by Atlanta police officer. That was not done by a Black person. Most of those crimes, and the crime in particular of arson in Atlanta, were done by white lives. And now we have nowhere even solved the issue of Black Lives Matter. And because we as African Americans have allowed someone to take over our narrative yet again, we have now skipped over the entire foundational issue of everything that we're going through. Even with COVID-19, the issue of race in America, we've now skipped over that to now we're defunding the police. Defunding the police becomes a neutral situation, because of police, they're a mixture of every race. So it's just in regards to a segment of our government. but it doesn't deal with the core social issues of class and division and money and the drive behind racism, which is violence and class and division against black-skinned people, black and brown-skinned people, specifically black-skinned, dark black-skinned people, people with kinky hair, people with Afrocentric features, people who cannot say that I can look ambiguous. The main issue has always been against the people who looked like the people that were taken initially from Africa to help fund this nation. And so I'm a representation of that same sister that got on that boat and made that transatlantic journey over here to America from West Africa or East Africa, from where I descend from. I look just like her. And so that same racism that created an avenue to put her on that ship for so many months, being treated like an animal, to who I am today, that's that same link. There is no differentiation between her and I. I don't care how many degrees, I don't care what experiences I have, I don't care what era of century I'm living in. I am a true reflection of but I have weave. When I take this weave off and my natural hair shows, my hair, my features, my voice, my nose, my lips, my everything, my booty, my breast, everything is a reflection of that African woman that was on that ship 500 and 600 years ago to this woman that's sitting in this chair talking to you today. And that is the reason why we continue to have this fight, because I ain't going nowhere. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm here. See, she was brought here. She was brought here for the purpose of free labor. I exist here for the purpose of equal rights. So I'm here and I'm still causing a problem now, because I'm now demanding something that rightfully belongs to me, and legislation that protects those rights. And that is a continued problem of white America, the whole of white America, and the reason that there is class and there is economic division and inequity, and that is why there is racial division. So the reason why I say, why is the mayor of Portland being tear gassed, I just don't understand it, because I want to know this. From Black Lives Matter to white people being shot down with rubber bullets, to people being killed because they're holding up a sign that says hashtag BLM. When none of that is helping my black life right now. I promise you it's not. I don't solely blame white America for taking over our movement to help figure out their identity and their own government at this moment. I do put maybe about 2 to 5% blame on the creators of Black Lives. I pay homage to those women that started this movement. But just like the Me Too movement and the director of the Me Too movement, she had to become more visible. She had to bring more of an African American female voice to the Me Too movement, because that's exactly what it was all about from the get-go. The Me Too movement was because of the degradation of sexual violence that was happening towards African American women, women of color, who did not have a voice in their home, in their workplace. And it's because we don't have that voice. And really, this goes even back to the plantation. We didn't have Me Too started back then. We didn't have a voice on that slave ship when we were being raped and impregnated. We didn't have a voice, and yet sexual violence occurred towards us. And it continued to perpetuate and grow. and became acceptable. Even to this very day, we're still dealing with issues, even with men within our own community. And the reason on why, even in our modern times, the Me Too movement is so important is because the African American community still has an issue with mental health, seeking psychiatric help, seeking psychologists and counselors to help us deal with these pains, this violence, so that we can organize a better pathway. But the Me Too movement was started solely, if I am correct, that was one of the main motivations behind it. And that too had started to become an issue of the white woman. Like, no, you cannot do that. It is okay to find similarities in the Me Too movement and to help support the Me Too movement. But this is really our first black feminist movement since we have been in this country. And it became hijacked by wealthy white women. Wealthy white women that had a voice in the workplace. But instead of using that voice, you somewhat took it as an advantage. So, which brings me to the Black Lives Matter. At this point in time, we cannot allow any other racial group, and I'm sorry, I'm being specific, we cannot allow any other racial group except for the African American community to push the initiative of the Black Lives Matter, because the things that matter to us as black people, policing is just an extension of some of those fundamental issues that matter to us. Remember, Black Lives Matter was started by essentially 3 black women. And so I think a lot of the core issues that we share as black women here in America have a lot to do with our economy. We're one of the fastest rising educated groups of women here in America, and yet we still have an issue if we're hired, we may be earning up to 1/3 less than our white female counterparts. That's an issue that matters to my black life. Another issue that matters to my black life is the fact of my inability to possibly be able to marry, and to marry someone that can help to, as a partner, financially support our household to be able to raise future American citizens that are productive to the society. I'm in a community where the men that look like me, a majority of them are incarcerated. In fact, there are certain studies that support that there are more black men incarcerated in the United States justice system than there were black men enslaved during slavery in America before it was emancipated. That's an issue because we're already a minority group within this country. Then there are fundamental issues on what led to that. And education, there's an education imbalance here in the United States of America, and where even the African American community has a confused dialogue in which we teach to our own children. We teach our children, go to college, HBCU, go to college, get your education, and that is so important. You have to get your education. There's different ways you can get your education, but you need to be educated. I don't care where you live in the world. But at the same time, we as African Americans and our country do not invest in literacy programs on the level of what should be invested in our young African American men and girls, African American boys and girls, especially K through middle school. So they're not reading at the correct grade level. We experienced that here in Macon, Georgia. I can already see the foretelling of where many of our young people that are in grade school or middle school, or they're getting ready to come out of high school, I see why there is an issue there with some of the crime. And it is because they are not adequately reading on their level. I was born and raised up in New York, and I had two parents in the household. And my dad, he taught me how to read. I mean, I was reading words on a level of like a sixth grader in first grade, but I had to also stop because I excelled in one area, but I lacked in comprehension. And so back then, New York had this great educational program where they invested a lot of money into reading labs, in especially predominantly African American minority communities, to help to support children and reducing the literacy level, the illiterate level. And in first grade, I remember having to go to start reading lab, and I had to start math lab too. I've never really excelled in math, maybe until later on, but I loved reading, but the comprehension part I just didn't understand. And so they were able to incorporate different tools to where I had to go to a phonics class. I had to sit with headphones and to listen to phonetic pronunciations, and to become familiar with recognizing and developing my own relationship with words, to the point to where by the time I got to third grade, I outscored everyone in the entire school district. And we're talking about the entire school district. So we're talking about not only the minority communities, but I outscored in the reading part of the standardized test in third grade. I outscored white children, Asian children, Jewish children, who were a great population in that county. I outscored everybody. And I was a young black girl in the hood. But it's because they took that investment and they infused that investment in me, and I was able to excel. I had the right type of tools. I was able to compete on the same level as even a white young girl counterpart in another part of the district that's living on a high income bracket. That's fairness. That's addressing an issue in the Black Lives Matter. Another issue that's important to us that we have completely skipped over is the inner city violence that continues. We did not come from a culture of violence within our village. That's something that we inherited due to the drug wars that were implanted into our communities. Once we left the plantation fields, we had no other choice but to create organizations and create this understanding amongst us as African Americans, that education was going to be the key to our success and our survival, and that because we knew that we were not invited into the American economic system, we had to create one of our own. And so that is why there was such a success in establishing historically black college and universities post-slavery. That's why there was such a success in creating the Black Wall Streets in the different parts of the United States, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Atlanta, Georgia, the Great Atlantis, and other parts of the United States. Also in Florida, Rosewood is another what was considered a self-functioning African American community. And so we had everything that we needed, and black on black crime was not an issue then, because the driving issue was white on black crime, of the lynchings and the continued fear tactics that were placed on us by hate groups, the terrorism that we had to endure as a people. So we were very focused. We were being drafted. We were signing up for the military. We were adding to the solutions to help make this country great. And then here comes crack. Actually, I'll even go further back. Here comes smack, heroin in our community. And how can we, as a people who were not even by law able to go to particular universities and colleges, how can we learn particular chemistry and scientific compounds to be able to create these drugs? And how can we, as a segregated people, and people who were being counted out as not being intelligent enough or acceptable enough to be included into the scientific and medical community at a greater capacity, how can we, and also business, how can we be over logistics and the level United States wide to be able to transport the cocoa and the other and the poppy seeds to come over here to create crack and heroin? Now, marijuana might be one thing, and even that, we didn't own hardly any land. So how can we cultivate this large amount of marijuana to be able to create the product, distribute it, and then logistically transport it across the United States? And we're only getting maybe $5 for each sale. The only thing that we're getting out of it is a little fast car that's not paid for and some rims. That's not economic wealth. That's someone who was being bamboozled. That's someone who was being exploited for a larger system. See, that larger system came from the United States, making billions of dollars with European countries and countries within the Central Americas and South America, and bringing those drugs in to poor communities. Of course, it's going to become so violent to where you're going to now have to incarcerate those that you put the drugs into, because who's going to take the rap? Congress is not going to do it. Senate is not going to do it. The White House is not going to do it. The president is not going to do it, even if he may have some type of financial benefit from it. He's not going to jail off of a dime bag. No, you are the same, because you look like, because see, the reason why you was brought here was to work. Remember, you was not brought here for any other particular reason. And the selling of drugs is just an extension of the voyage, the transatlantic voyage that brought us here. That's just an extension. You're just continuing the work of the plantation. Still being exploited, still not being paid what we're supposed to be paid, still being enshackled. It is crazy to me how this system continues to be successful against some of the most powerful people on earth. We are some of the most powerful, intelligent, intellectual people on the planet, a part of this strong diaspora, and yet we can't see the smallest minute issues that's holding us back as a people. But that just goes back to say that once they incarcerated our African American men, there was no one there in the household to help support the family. And so now we have another problem. We have to now feed and clothe and house these black women and their children. In comes the food stamps. What social program until President Roosevelt came on the scene? What social program in the United States ever look to help African American people as a whole, outside of the Freedmen's Bureau. Freedmen's Bureau was really an organization that was catapulted by those free African Americans post-slavery, many of them who became involved with in the Reconstruction era in legislation. Some of that was motivated by that, along with the United States. That's the only reason why that was there, because after the Reconstruction period, you see all of that slowed down, and then we started to stream into segregation, to Jim Crow. But what other social program besides Social Security that was helped to put in by President Roosevelt? That's why a lot of older black people from that time, they really admire President Roosevelt, because they remember that him and his wife Eleanor, they did try to do something for black people, and it's still long-standing to this day. And also collecting the stories of the slave narratives of slaves that were still living amongst us. They did try to put in a genuine effort. I'm not saying they were perfect. I'm just saying that those are long-lasting efforts that we can still see today. But besides that, what other program has there ever been? They had to create a law called affirmative action to try to include us in anything, because the norm was to just to not include us in everything. So we had to create a law to help filter us in there. So now that these black women are single, a lot of us, because of racism, we were not able to gain secondary post-high school education, and so depression definitely set in. Mental health became an issue. Mental health is what drove a lot of the abuse of drugs within the African American community, because we did not do that. We didn't have time to do that. We were too busy raising white people kids and cleaning their houses. And then we had to come home, raise our kids, clean our house, take care of our husbands. So we were too busy to be doing all of that as black women. Then go into the churches and the mosques and try to run the community. We were too busy doing that. But when the crack and the smack epidemic hit our community, mental health was really the motivating factor behind why so many black women became drug addicted. And that broke down the family. But along with that came food stamps, housing, so that it definitely continued to divide the family, because on that application, you pretty much could not include your male partner. If your male partner did come home from jail, he has a felony now. So a felony means that disqualifies you from equal housing. Even if you went to prison because you was trying to sell dope to try to feed your family, because they brought it to you. This was the economic opportunity that the government brought to you. And all you was doing is doing your job. You was just doing your job, trying to feed your family. And we didn't understand that even though we were trying to feed our family, it was going to have reverb across the board. But we didn't cause that. We didn't put it in there. We were not the logistic machine. We were not the chemists and the scientists. We were not the economists doing the facts and figures on the return on investment this was going to bring our nation back, because we did not have exposure to that type of information and data. Let's be honest. So with the food stamps, the housing, and also the food stamps, the housing, and it also brought in the free Medicare. So Medicare started to become an issue. So now we got these, which I like, particular programs to help prevent families that we're not prepared to take care of. But there is also a motivation behind some of these historic organizations like Planned Parenthood. When Medicaid came about to have to pay for black women to have these babies, from men who were now coming home from prison. They couldn't live with us, so that created a whole new lifestyle within our black community. If I can't go home with my woman, then I'm gonna have to go home with somebody. So I start creating all of these children with the women who allow me to stay with them, because I need housing, because I can't qualify for housing. I don't have the education. I'm not making enough money. Even if I go back and work in a restaurant job or washing dishes, whatever, it's not enough money for me to pay for a real apartment. So I'm in all of these women's houses and I'm creating all of these families, and I can't financially pay for them. And I definitely can't pay for their insurance to have these babies. So that became an issue. In came the rushing of Planned Parenthood, which to me, I like Planned Parenthood to a particular point, in regards to being able to inform women their rights and how they can better enhance their rights and to take advantage of the resources for them that best meet their needs. But it was also motivated by trying to limit the amount of children that black women were giving birth to and couldn't afford to pay for the medical cost of it. And then after, it was sterilization on a national level, because we don't want to pay for these black women having these babies, even though we caused the problem. And then we got to continue taking care of these black children, because they cut off Medicaid for black women after they give birth to the baby. They will cover you, I think, up to 3 months, and then after you've given birth to your child, and then after that, the only thing that's covered is your children for Medicaid, which also creates another problem, because we are, at that time, a majority of them were poor, uneducated, and they're in the new phase of this divided community, the new phase of this this perversive creation and development of what the new black family looked like and black fathering looked like. And it led us into not being able to have health insurance for ourselves. And so we suffer. They say, well, black women suffer far greater. We die at a higher rate to certain cancers, pre-existing conditions that lead to strokes and heart attacks. It's because we don't have health care at a greater capacity as our white counterparts might, or our Hispanic female counterparts might have. And so that's an issue. All of those things are counted against us. These are the issues, and for the last part of what matters to me as a black life, because a lot of us black mothers who are now in the community, many of us are unmarried. There's a new phase of the black family, and it's a hodgepodge. So you have some black people, African Americans, that are marrying each other, and there's this push. It's like we always have to have some type of movement. We always got to see an example for us to do the things that we're supposed to do. Okay, so there's a black love movement, right? And to where we're encouraging African American people to get married to each other, because we see that those rates are completely in the trash. And so we're on these social sites and we take pictures and hashtags, and we want to make sure that we market that black love is okay. That's one sector of it, but that's a very small sector. Then we have the other part of this new family, and that's the LGBTQ part. And over the years, because it was not as acceptable years ago, there were laws against it, we now have these new laws, and we have this new acceptance of gay and lesbian, queer lifestyle, bisexual, transsexual a pansexual lifestyle, and that's also creating a new family. And so within the Black community, unlike the white community that have gay and lesbian partners, it seems as if the white community, as gay and lesbian partners, they tend to adopt more. Whereas in the African American community, and this is just a qualitative observation in my part, okay? Qualitative means it's just like an observation. This is data that I'm collecting from what I see. These are not hard numbers like a quantitative, but from what I see and from what I've experienced and what I work around and what I live in my community that I live in, I see a lot of lesbian Black female couples that create real households, and where they're bringing they're meshing families together, and they're raising each other's children, and they're not producing any more children, because you cannot produce any more kids if of same sex unless you're doing in vitro fertilization. And that typically tends to be on the lower end, and we don't as much adopt. I don't really see that in my community. The same-sex couples, even gay men, gay Black men, I don't see a lot of gay Black men unless they have a gay white partner, adopt or foster children. I'll see more single African American men foster children and lead to adoption. I don't really see a whole lot of gay Black men or gay Black women. And that could be something a part of the culture, something socially that's different. And then the other end of our new family is just the single Black mother now. The educated or the self-supported Black mother who could be placed in the middle class bracket. However, because she's taking care of another human being along with herself, earning at a lower income level in comparison to her white female counterparts in society, we're considered low income. I'm considered low income as well. I have one daughter, but throughout my life, even after getting education, like, I don't care, I was still considered low income. A lot of us have never owned homes, and some of us that have had the opportunity to own homes, many of us were taken advantage of through the subprime lending, or because there is such it's always so sketchy, the job market, the economic market here in America. You may be laid off, or you may be furloughed, and so that takes a part into us earning for ourselves, and we don't have that second income to help support us at a greater rate as in the white, Latina, East Asian, and Asian communities. So that's a whole new phase. That whole single mom, it's hard to always raise the perfect child when you don't have certain supports in the household. And a lot of these young men that are partaking in gun violence, they have moms at home. A lot of them don't have moms locked up anymore because of the crack and smack epidemic. A lot of these women are home now. They're working, or they're college educated. They're graduate college, they're grad school educated, and somehow their sons are still becoming a part of this violent lifestyle. It's not because they're bad mothers, it's because we don't have that reinforcement of a father figure in the household. And we as African American women, we tend to, sometimes I fault us for some of this. If love or affection is not included into the relationship between us and a Black man, we will dismiss the Black man altogether. I'm not talking about Black men that molest children. I'm not talking about Black men that are violent. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's a lot of great Black men that are out there that we can have platonic relationships with, and a platonic understanding that I'm looking for a father figure in my son's life. And I invite you, it could be a friend or it could be an uncle, someone that is trusted, someone that you know they have good morals and character, okay? And we know we can't find that in the church because the black women lead the church. Even if we're not the lead of the church, the predominant population membership of the flock is black women. And so we just don't have the numbers to be able to just go to a brother in the church and say, hey, you know, I got these 2 sons, can you shoot some ball with them sometime? And then you got a lot of black men that they just don't want to be bothered. You know, they'll do their little pick up some trash on the weekend with their fraternity brothers, you know, because that's good for them, you know, or they don't look at themselves as being a role model, just like I forget the NBA player Charles Barkley said years ago, I'm not a role model. And he is a prime example of another main reason on why our black family looks the way it does, because we have a lot of African American men that are successful that don't want to be involved with black women. And what they do is they purposely, with intent, date outside of their race. They don't do it because black women don't look good, and don't believe that. Don't believe this initiative, this narrative that black women look like this and they that, and they got fake this and fake. Remember, black women, we just had a whole movement of natural hair. Even if you see us wearing protective styles like this, like wigs and weaves, we still have natural hair up underneath. We still can wear braids. Braids is a part of our culture. That's not fake. That's straight from Africa. Locks is not fake. That's straight from Africa. But black men who become a part of these social circles that are more connected to white males, what they tend to do is they want to emulate and want to be accepted. And so what they do is they tend to socialize. I can't meet a black woman. I can't meet no black woman to marry. Why you can't meet no black woman to marry? Because you so far up them white men behind that all you see is their daughters or their cousins or the women they work with. And so that's why you can't see any black women to marry. They're not worried about going to the black church around the corner from where you live. Care less about that. Because they don't fall in the social circle of the white men that you are trying to communicate with and you're trying to do business with, and you feel as if your social mobility and economic mobility is in them. And so what you do is you emulate, because that's what we as African American people have been known to do in this country. We take on and emulate the things that we see of our oppressors. And they go and they marry white women, and they give no time. Fine if you want to marry a white woman, that's fine. I can care less. That's love is love. If you love somebody, you love somebody. I don't care who you love. But at the same time, you do have a responsibility to yes you do. Because some black men be like, I don't owe anybody nothing. Oh yes you do. You owe a responsibility to all them black women or them black people in that community, because a lot of black men found a lot of their wealth in athletics. Okay, let's get real now. Okay, and when white people found out that black men can make their money throwing a ball, it created a whole new relationship. And so that comes from a black man being birthed by a black woman. There was a study done on that. The African American athletes, the really successful African American athletes, are birthed from African parents in comparison to white athletes or other. So now that there is a racial mixing, I'd love to see what those numbers look like maybe 40 years from now if I'm alive. Hope to God, if I'm alive, I love to see those numbers to see what does because it seems like there's a breakdown even in the sports sector where you don't have that same quality athlete anymore, and if they are quality athlete, they're like a chupacabra, like Lord, what's his name, from Cleveland, Ohio. I can't think of his name right now. I love him. I used to not be a fan, but I love him now because he does so much. He is the epitome of the new modern black man. Him and a couple of other sports athletes, just in athletics. There are a whole group of black men that I look up to that are outside of athletics. Let me make that clear. I'm just talking about him in particular. But yeah, so that's where we're at. So those are the issues that mean something to my black life. So if you're out there as a white person catching rubber bullets, getting tear gas, don't. And as far as police injustices, don't. Because see, we're gonna have to deal with some stuff further than what happened to George Floyd. Because if we don't deal with what happened in the past and the purpose and the intent of placing the police in the black community from the get-go, we will never get to the real solution of what the new police system is going to look like. I don't want to defund any police. I need my protection because violence does not always occur to me directly. It can happen indirectly, and I need to know as a tax-paying citizen that when I call 911, somebody's going to answer on the other end of that call. Because yes, E911 is also part of the police force. I used to be E911 for a very short time, years and years ago. That is a very stressful job. That is a job you have really got to be intelligent because there's a lot of codes you have to memorize, signals. There's a whole nother vocabulary that you have to have on demand. And the point of communication is one of the most important parts of our criminal justice process because it connects the crime to the officer, to the detainment, to the court sentencing, and the justice behind it. So there's a whole system behind it. But again, my name is Stacey Jenkins. I hope to do some more videos. It's been a very long time since I did a personal video. Again, visit both of my media pages on YouTube, Epic Urban TV and Pop of Genius Films. And we're also on Facebook. I took a social media break during this time because I needed that fast. And so our Facebook pages are not open at this time, but our YouTube pages are. And we're also open on Instagram, but I don't have a whole lot of followers on Instagram, so I'm not on there all the time. And I think we have one on Twitter too, not on there all the time. So I'm really taking a break from social media. But I encourage you to watch our videos on both Epic Urban TV and Pop of Genius Films. And definitely reach out and email me at Pop of Genius Films, GA, at Outlook.com, and Epic Urban TV at Outlook.com. No, I'm sorry. Epic Urban TV at gmail.com. I'm sorry. Epic Urban TV at gmail.com and Pop of Genius Films, GA at Outlook.com. Thank you. Be blessed. Peace and safety. Wear your mask. Think about other people besides yourself. Let us get through this global pandemic on the other side successfully and be prepared for other pandemics that are possibly bound to come our way.